Hello, welcome. I have been waiting. The moment we are done, I'm going on a wraith hunt in the local cemetery. When I kill the undead, they stay undead. That's exactly where we want them. Let's begin this wild ride before I get antsy and start playing with those rock-salt shotgun shells again, and I lose another window to eager fingers and an overactive mind. His name? Andy Romero, 22. One man's treasure is another man's trash. Or something like that. What Andy thought was trash was left to be the world's treasure. Yet he was soon to find his own output would be ripe for a grand homecoming. Location, Pasadena, California. Date, October 2013. He was an activist. Andy Romero was a good talker and a lousy game player, and that made him a prime member for the activist caste. To cement the appellation, he even moved in with all his fellow low-rent pawnbrokers, right in the heart of big front country, Los Angeles, California. Life for Andy was an endless trail of talk. He'd spew any old trash to get ahead, to get into a group, to get laid, to keep his job, and avoid his incompetence catching up to him, cheating people of money or services, and most importantly, he'd talk big in order to prove to everyone that he was more righteous than anyone else. Pinnacle on that performance chart was the idea he had poured proudly forth that he was a true environmentalist concerned for all the little animals and the plants and the purity of the soil, etc., etc. Whatever that meant, it really didn't matter. All that mattered was that Andy was the most admirable and appetent person within 1,000,000 miles. Along the trails of the local wilds, he would frequently trod, proving he was also physically capable and just like the rest of the desperate also-rans in life's competitive race. He was so desirous to be adventurous and unique that he'd go as far into the wilderness as the pack would hike or camp. Andy was always sure to be near a group to which he could flout his self-awareness and obvious moral value. Where else could someone prove their love of the outdoors and nature than the forests with a lot of other sunshine tourists dirtying up pristine public lands in the name of environmentalism? He'd congratulate himself on a return from the rugged hinterlands with a spree of consumerism at Starbucks and the Apple Store, new Nikes and a splurge at Wayfair, new Levi's and some Calvin Klein. It was reward for being a stalwart steward of sanitary scenery. Andy would drive the largest SUV because it was safe and everyone else did it. But he wouldn't do it if the law would only stop him. After all, why were they available if they weren't any good? And the 7 useless seats in back were there in case he ever had to rescue a soccer team from a forest fire. Andy didn't intend it for a family. He had himself snipped in case a family might unexpectedly break out in his sexual vicinity, and he'd have to take responsibility for all those bastard children and their carbon footprint ushering in environmental doom. So you see, Andy covered all his bases. He was indeed the best and most righteous environmental activist in the world. Or so he said, because, while in his air-conditioned pad with all the lights on and electronics blaring, Andy was unable to hear the approaching penalty for his true transgressions. It began with an awfully high-pitched squonking and splorching, tediously repeating disgusting noises, as this visitor came to Andy one day. Horrendous image of a world unexpected greeted the illuminated minds of those neighbors in Andy's area of Pasadena. The image of undesired visitation bringing home all the woes of those high-minded peoples in his social group. His doorbell rang, and the handle of the front door was eagerly jostled up and down by an intrusive figure come from afar. Before the hapless radical could get to the entry and open the gray... Excuse me, my cat, Mr. Nice Guy, wants to add to the story. Anyway, let me continue. Before the hapless radical could get to the entry and open to greet the annoying presence, the door was bashed violently inward, and forth strode a sight indeed to behold. And he backed up in horror. What was before his eyes was disgusting, smelly, weird, and thoroughly unpleasant and embarrassing. It was a man-sized conglomeration of name-brand trash ambling into his foyer. There were Starbucks cups for feet, Nike boxes and wine bottles for legs, various other containers for hips, chest, and arms, with fast food bags for lungs, inflating and deflating slowly. And on top was an arrangement of crushed beer cans and cases misrepresenting a human head. "Yo, dude!" it greeted Andy, weaving a flailing appendage of poster tubes and toilet paper rolls. "Gonna stay a while and have some fun." "What?" expelled Andy from puzzlement and fear. This thing was clearly not a special effect from the studios. There could be no one inside this unceremonious semblance of humanity. No wires or tubes followed the form. It was also absolutely clear that this monstrosity was related to him by the names written on the Starbucks cups. And now he remembered all those products' wrappings as items he had purchased recently. How was it moving? What was it? "I figured I'd be adventurous and see my homie," the putrid pile choked out of some tin can vocal cords. "My pappy-doo, or whatever I should call you." Without ability to find words to counter the creature, Andy merely watched, evacuating its path, as it struggled through his home and flopped on his ample, expensive designer couch before the TV. "Seems a good place to settle down for a spell," it said. "Nice place. Hope I don't spoil it for you." Andy ran in front of it. "Get out!" he shouted. "No!" the trash plainly countered. "Get out now or I'm calling the cops," Andy threatened. "Fine! I would love to see them," the visitant replied. The cops were indeed called, and they inspected the detrimental detritus, which merely lay on the floor, motionless and formless. The cops left, threatening Andy with a hefty penalty if they were ever frivolously called again. A note on his record, a minor alert to a local mental health professional, and the authorities departed. Immediately, the heap of garbage animated once more and sat on Andy's couch in the shape of a human. "I like them," the singular sojourner said. "They understand you so well." Frustration overwhelmed the young man, and he battered the thing with a wooden baseball bat. It wasn't deformed or disturbed by the outburst. It merely sat and patiently accepted the rude interaction until Andy was exhausted and defeated. "Violence is never the answer," prosaic platitude poured plentiful and preposterous from the purged pieces. "That's why I am here. I don't want to harm you, Andy, my mandy. I just want to commune with you forever." "No way!" yelled Andy. "Leave, now!" "Come now!" the thing tried to calm the man. "I'm just a part of your life, aren't I? I'm the things you gave to the world. Look at all this fine art and detail you threw away. Threw into the woods. Into my home. What home? Andy was inconsolable. I've never done anything to warrant this. Oh, it argued. Indeed you did. Remember me? Remember my home? You came there ever so often with your friends and leave things about. You left all of this for me. Now I'm returning it and learning how you live. This is fun. What are you talking about? What are you? Andy bellowed. I'm the spirit of the forests, it replied. I'm just a peaceful, fun-loving guy like you. Chillin'. I have been home to so many unwanted arrivals over the centuries, and I was really getting sick of having no say in it whatsoever, and having to house all the castaway garbage of humanity. And so you pick on me? Andy cried out in anguish. Me? I'm the greatest defender and proponent of nature and animals' rights and environmentalism. Oh, you say the darndest things, you humans. It flippantly waved a polluted paw. It might seem unfair to you, but someone had to win the lottery. I chose you, Pikachu. Let's go wild and really enjoy this journey together. What does that mean? Andy asked. I'm obviously staying, the spirit creature said, and everything you ever discard from now will come back to you as part of me, making you complete. You will be forever around all the things you gave to this world. Be proud of what I am. I am you, buckaroo. Oh, God, no! Andy groaned. Shut up, atheist, it replied. And thus began a relationship unlike any other. It was akin to the odd couple. Andy was seemingly conjoined to the interloper. Worse, it was just a smelly, unsightly lump that inhabited his living areas, rarely moving much, just talking up a storm and making odd, trashy noises. Friends came over, but were repelled one by one until Andy could never bring people to his home again. He tried setting fire to the thing, and his house would be collateral damage, but it merely smothered the flames with bits of itself. Even gasoline wasn't able to catch on and torch it. And yet, to compound problems, anything Andy discarded came to rest magically back in the offensive form of this vengeful vision. It was growing. It was also growing tiresome after a few months. Andy attempted to move, but it would merely appear within days, resting in his place. The aggravated activist went out into the woods to camp with his associates, but the next morning, this pile of dross would be scattered all around Andy's tent or sleeping area. It was so disgusting to the other do-gooders that they ostracized Andy from their reindeer games. The situation was growing desperate. Andy couldn't buy or consume things. If he did, and threw out a wrapper, cup, or box, it just showed up to bulk the human form of this rubbish roommate. Neighbors believed Andy was a hoarder. Most thought he was merely insane. When gone at work in a daze, the stuff would rest in his front windows and be on display for passerbys. So Andy had to convince people he knew to use his money, buy him things, and give them to him, disposing of the remaining useless packaging themselves. It was horribly tedious. Even going to a fast food place or restaurant. Andy had to cajole some naive office girl to buy his food and feed it to him. The situation was terrifically tragic and horribly humorous at the same time to the tormenting trash monster. It would watch from afar and inwardly gloat about the magnificent perfection of its plans. However, nothing stays the same forever. Across the years, Andy perfected his path to avoidance of further pain. The entire predicament was in comfortable stasis, with the supernatural being complacently resting in his home while he spent most of his time out with a new set of friends, where they accommodated Andy's fascinating eccentricities and found them endearing. It couldn't last forever. One night, as Andy came in close to midnight, tiredly stumbling up the stairs, his unbelievable boarder beckoned for Andy to talk. "What do you want?" Andy became annoyed. "I was thinking," the spirit being frankly told Andy, "our relationship has grown stale. We need to pepper it up a bit. You are doing such a nice job keeping everything so clean and pristine and being true to your word that I believe it's time to step it up a notch and bring it all home." And with the snap of its massive finger-like appendages, the litter-rich life-form hearkened and heralded a new brigade of additional arrivals to add to its bloated body. There was a gurgling noise, a foaming, roaring sound shaking the house. Hissing and struggling, it issued forth a signal of arrival. And then an unforgivable stench. The smell was atrociously unbearable to Andy. "What is it?" Andy cried out in grief. "What are you doing?" "Say hello," the reclined roomie of relinquished wrappers exuberantly related, "to a new addition, your dearest and most plentiful product within this world." A slivering stream of gray and brown sluiced across the floor from the bathroom, conjoining, filling out the form of the merciless monster, creating a substrate, a shell, and a kind of flesh around the arrangement of trash and thoughtlessly thrown away items. "It's your own shit," it triumphantly announced. "Your greatest accomplishment ever." Like and subscribe before I die. And ring the little bell or you will surely go to hell.
Oh, we're telling spooky stories. This is not a spooky story. Oh, there's no way on the couch I can
it
say.
depends how you look at it. It is kind of spooky.
I guess so.
Wait, that's it? That's the end of the story?
That is a